Right. Welcome, everyone. Akasha here, Nan Akasha from nanakasha.com and Bliss Life Podcast. And this is another in our energy medicine series for the Global Healing Series. And I'm very excited today. It's an incredible honor. We've got somebody who's been around a long time and has incredible amounts of opportunity to share with you experiences in healing. And Richrad Gordon, thank you so much for being here.
What a pleasure, Akasha. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And so, Richrad, you're the founder of Quantum Touch Healing. And I know you've had a lot of different experiences in healing. You've got lots of places in the world where you're teaching this. It's phenomenal. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your journey and how you came to be sharing this powerful touch method?
Well, in the middle 70s, I noticed my health was going down the tube. Actually, the early 70s, and I decided to go to a holistic health school. And I learned something called polarity therapy, wrote a book on polarity therapy that was a bestseller. And then just before the book came out in 1978, I encountered a gentleman who showed me things that made my jaw drop. I was dating a woman who had a major scoliosis, and he just had her come to the front of the room, and we watched her hip just roll like this. And then he touched the base of her occiput, and the occiput leveled out. And then he worked up and down her spine, just from this spot to that spot to that spot. And within 10 minutes, at least half her scoliosis was straightened out. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's how it works," and blah, blah, blah. He said, "Oh yeah, well, we've seen tumors the size of a grapefruit dissolve, and we've seen broken bone heal in a day." And he was telling these tall tales. I didn't believe him until I saw him work with my girlfriend. So I apprenticed with him, took over in his retirement, and then radically evolved his system, which had a lot of crapola as well as good stuff. And I removed the crapola and put in all the best stuff and continued to evolve the system to the point now where we have practitioners in well over 50 countries. We've got, my books are in 17 languages. I've written 4 of them now. Each one takes it further. Each one is more discoveries and more techniques and ways that we can amplify the energy and be able to be even more effective than before. And some of the discoveries that happened most recently were discoveries to have a viable way of exploring the intersection of matter and consciousness itself, which would change our understanding of physics, biology, medicine, and psychology. Then it took me 30 years to figure out a method for helping people to discover and release the emotional causes of health conditions. But just before the call, I was thinking, what would be really interesting today? And what occurred to me is, well, what's on everybody's mind is a certain virus. And so I thought, I haven't heard back from my practitioners yet how it's working. I've heard that it's improving, but I really had a really deep question. And that is from some experiences that happened about 20 years ago. One of our first instructors with Quantum Touch was the head nurse anesthesiologist at a hospital in Pennsylvania. And during one of the surgeries, the person's blood oxygen level, called blood gas level, was crashing. And what could happen? Well, not good things. Like they could go into a coma, they could die, they could have strokes, they could have all kinds of problems. So she walks over to the patient, puts her hands on his chest, runs energy with quantum touch. That's what we call the movement. We use breathing and body awareness to raise our vibration, to help the other person lift their vibration. We don't heal anybody. What we do is we hold a field to let their body and spiritual intelligence do its own self-healing to match your vibration. So we're constantly raising our vibration with this constant breathing body awareness exercises that we teach everybody, which any child can learn. It's so easy. But anyway, she puts her hands on the man's chest and the blood gas level just goes right up to 98%. Great. So she starts walking away, and as she's walking, she sees it starting to come down again. She goes, oops. She walks back over and says, I guess I didn't give him enough. She puts her hands back on there, runs energy further, and the blood oxygen level comes right back up. And she holds it for like 15 minutes until it's stabilized and she can walk away and it's all good. And then I was reading that a lot of people with COVID-19, what happens to them is even on ventilators, even though the lungs are being properly ventilated, the lungs are not receiving the oxygen. Now, I don't know if quantum touch is going to solve this problem. I don't make up stuff. I just report what happens. So if anybody knows somebody who's in this situation, who's open to receiving healing, we have practitioners all over the world. We're growing fastest in China. It's just, we've got people everywhere. So what I'd recommend is let's find out if this is something that will help a person who's having difficulty. And another possible test with people with what used to be called emphysema is now called COPD, but they're not receiving a lot of oxygen either from their lungs. So this would be interesting to find out what quantum touch is doing with those patients as well. So on our website, we've got lists of practitioners and instructors, and I feel like the guy selling the Ginzu knives, and it doesn't have to be local. The distant healing works every bit as good as if you've had your hands right on them, because love is not a physical thing. It's a spiritual energy, and it's not limited by time or space.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I know that a lot of people, of course, now the consciousness around all forms of 8,000 in the US alone, forms of energy healing is raising, thankfully. Wow. Yes. And so as that awareness raises, as we're, bringing the different modalities to people's awareness, I know that I've been doing this kind of work started Reiki about 35 years ago and on the path, right? So, but at first, it's very hard for the average person to believe that if you're not standing there touching them, right, nothing's going to happen. And I've been doing radionics and Rife and all these distance healings, and I've seen
about that.
Miracles, just amazing things. So can you share a little bit more about like how you learned that and what is that? How can people get past their disbelief and really receive the benefits?
Direct experience is the best teacher. So if a person doesn't believe it, well, I don't care. The energy doesn't care. Let's see what happens. And it's so funny sometimes working on hard skeptics, because they have really interesting denial mechanisms. And you've probably seen this too. I remember one time I met this young woman, and she was just in agony about this headache she was having. Telling, oh my God, this headache is so bad. Oh my God, it's the worst headache, blah, 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 blah. So I said, well, maybe I can help. All right. So I touch her head and I'm working the energy. Now, unlike Reiki, we're working hard. We're bringing it. We're not waiting for the energy to come. We're doing this major breathing body awareness exercises. We're spinning it, vortexing, we're moving through chakras. We're doing work, and we're raising the vibration really, really high. And after about 5-6 minutes, I say, how's it now? She says, I don't think I really had a headache. So that taught me, when you're working on skeptics, you have to get them to give it a number before you begin. How bad is the headache? Well, it's a 9. All right. 9, huh? Yes, 9. Are we sure it's a 9? Okay. Now when they say it's gone, you say, well, I thought it was a 9. At least you have some, but she didn't believe that she had had a headache, because once it's gone, you don't have to remember it anymore.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I'm a hypnotherapist as well. And I remember I did a full day of work with a lady. And in the beginning, I had her rate everything 1 to 9,
Yes.
How painful was it? She couldn't even talk about her mother without just, breaking down in sobs. At the end, we went back, okay, rate them. And she looked at that one and goes, why are you asking me that? What's the big deal?
Yeah, right.
She'd completely forgotten something
exactly.
that was just taking over her life. So.
Exactly. It is amusing, but the cognitive dissonance is so great Speaking of cognitive dissonance, I had a really interesting experience a couple months ago. I somehow got invited to go to a lab meeting at the University of Arizona in the Bio 5 building. And these people are working with the latest and greatest ultrasound and MRIs and detection mechanisms. And so they have me tell my story. And I, much more detail, I'm going through each step, how I learned this thing. And then I learned that I could do it this way. And then I learned I could do it without touching. And then I could learn how I could work on 100 people simultaneously. And then I learned, that I could put consciousness into physical objects. We could talk about that. It's really fascinating. And they said, well, show us. Okay. So I have this little demonstration. It's not an important thing, just like the double slit experiment. Who cares if it becomes a particle or a wave, if the photon is going through one slit or two slits? It doesn't really mean much to the world, but the implications of it are mind-blowing. Yeah. Well, that's what this is. If a person's hips are twisted and one's hip looks much higher than the other, or the occiput, the base of the skull, if you lift up where the bone starts, and you lift up and it looks like one side's much higher than the other side, no one can adjust this. Chiropractors can't adjust this. They can crunch your hips, but 3 days later, you're back where you started in most cases. But I found out that back in 1978, that if I touch a person and run the energy, I can get the hips to level. But then it went back out again in 3 days. Then I discovered that I found a way of meditating for a few seconds and causing the hips to align, but then they would go out in 3 days. And then then one of my students turned me on to the sphenoid bone, which is behind the nose and eyes. And if you can align the sphenoid bone, then the occiput immediately aligns and the hips immediately align. And so that was a big discovery, because I could do both at a distance without touching somebody in seconds. And then I discovered that I could put that same consciousness into a physical object. And if I touch a person with that object with the intention of causing the alignment, it instantly works. And then I ran 58 experiments to find out what the limits and where the boundaries were of it. And I discovered something I call conscious entanglement, where you can join objects together in your mind, and anything you do to one of them spontaneously happens to all of them. And once I discovered that, then I created the quantum touch pendant. And I got my pendant here. And these are all joined together, so we got over 6,000 of them. So it's essentially a group talisman. Anyway, I digress. No, there I am showing the scientists, the whole room full of scientists, what I had found. And they said, well, let us measure. Great, let's do it. So I'm showing them how to feel where the top of the bone is, and then get their eyes level with their fingers. And they say, okay, yeah, this is clearly higher. And I say, okay, I'm just going to touch them. So I take my pendant and I touch a shoulder and I say, boing, because it's entertaining for me. and then they measure the hips and I say, let me measure. And like 3 or 4 of them are doing the measurements. They all, yeah, it's level now. Let's do somebody else. Okay. And then I say, all right, now I want you to hold the pendant, and you don't know anything about my work, but I want you to have the intention that it's going to cause their hips to align. And they are touching and measuring. And after 6 or 7, maybe 8 people, I don't remember exactly, they just said, okay, it's working. This is clearly working. They didn't have to do the double blind, because there's no way a person while they're standing is going to untwist their hips. It's just physiologically impossible. So one of the guys says, this is very exciting to me. I would love to study and publish, but I know if I do, I'll never get tenured. Yeah. And then another one says, I've got the latest MRI equipment that can actually separate bone, and it's non-invasive. And we can actually see this, and we can almost make a movie out of it moving, and we could do this. And he said, but this would be academic suicide. And another one said virtually the same thing. He said, I have ultrasound equipment and I could measure this in a different way, but yeah, it is academic suicide. And then the head professor said, well, yeah, it is academic suicide, because he says, of all the universities in the United States and Europe that are accredited, now there's a lot of, holistic ones, but the accredited universities, none of them will be willing to study what he called post-material science. So material science is believing that everything has a physical cause, that everything is atoms and molecules, and consciousness is an epiphenomenon of brain activity, and the whole paradigm of everything, not spirituality, have no impact on the physical reality. Well, then he said, but I'm afraid you come under the category of one of those people who is likely not to be appreciated by the larger world while you're alive. And then he said, well, there's Ignaz Semmelweis, who discovered you wash your hands before surgery. And then there's Gregor Mendel, who discovered genetics. And then there's James Lind, who discovered citrus prevented scurvy. And then there's William James, who discovered blood circulation. He named another 5 luminaries. And he said, you're kind of in that category because you've got something here that may be 20, 50, or 200 years ahead of its time. And everybody wished me well. But one of the friends of one of those people came to my house. I tried to teach about 5 of the PhDs how to do this, and only one could pick it up quickly, because I think PhD stands for permanent head damage, but it might stand for piled higher and deeper, or it could be both. This guy, I just gave like an instant brief lesson to see if they could just get it. Yeah. One guy got it instantly, and he went back home to somewhere in Eastern Europe. I forget where it was. And he helped everybody in his family, and nobody could believe that he had done anything. So he had one of those experiences too. But the other guys, they could not feel their hand without touching it. They had no kinesthetic awareness in their body. And what I think happens is when a person uses so much force to have to learn everything that they're throwing at you, then they just become this walking head, which is what one PhD I talked to described as acid experience. He said, well, I was just a walking head. You know, all there was his head. And it was a good description because he had lost his body experience. And how do we know things? We know things through felt body experience. And why is this true? Because our higher self speaks to us through bodily experiences, as well as emotions, which are also bodily experiences. So how do you know you're feeling sad? Well, you often feel it in your throat. How do you know you're angry? You often feel it in your gut. How do you know you're nervous? Because you feel it in your breath, in your shoulders, and you feel it. So we feel these emotions, but these are communications from a higher consciousness. Something is off. Pay attention. You need to be more emotionally vulnerable and honest with yourself. You need to express something. You need to be real. So we're constantly being given this information. Anyway, that was my delightful experience meeting with the scientists. And I'm hoping that before I leave this plane, that we will get the hard evidence nailed down. But even for scientists who I love and respect, who are in this field, what I've discovered has become very challenging for them.
Yes, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because one would wish, I think the average person who doesn't understand a lot of the things that have gone on for many, many years, many hundreds of years in healing, alternative and energetic healing, would be amazed, because there's this kind of healing happening all the time. And yet the average person is led to believe, oh, there's nothing you can do, go home and die, or you have to take these pills which have these side effects, or, you know. And I think that, yeah, when somebody becomes an expert or is seeking that academic tenure, or their goals professionally, successfully, or monetarily are more important than the healing, than the actual truth. Yeah, it's amazing. I've heard these kind of things before, like, oh yeah, I see that and it's real, but I'm not going to tell anybody that I know that. They'll all think I'm crazy. And gosh, I certainly hope it's not 200 years until we
don't
that.
know. We don't know. It could happen in 2 years. Rupert Sheldrake talked about an experience he had. He's a famous Cambridge professor who came up with theories of morphogenic fields and stuff. And I totally respect his work. And he said that he was giving a lecture once about psychic phenomenon. And during the breaks of the weekend, every single person at the conference came up to him and told him privately about their own experiences, but none of them would talk to each other about it because they've all had these experiences, but they don't want to acknowledge it publicly. Because when you break a paradigm, it's very painful. So exactly 400 years ago, Galileo was showing off the results of his telescope, and he looked at the phases of Venus because one of his students actually suggested to him, if Venus has phases like the moon, then that means the Earth is going around the sun. So he, for 6 months, he was drawing pictures of what Venus looked like in his journal. And this is it. This was his way of showing with the telescope that the Earth actually is not the center of the universe. Well, priests, a lot of them wouldn't look through the telescope. Those who did look through the telescope would usually say, well, it works during the day, but it obviously doesn't work at night. Which is just it's like a disinterest in what optics are. It's just a piece of witchcraft, as far as they can tell. It doesn't, And so that's how most medical people see energy healing, as placebo, suggestion, wishful thinking, things of this nature, woo-woo, essentially. But I can blow them away in seconds, because when I spoke at the Smart Life Forum in Silicon Valley, I did an experiment. I said, well, let's see if I can align the whole front row at once, unless somebody doesn't want me to. Okay, well, you're all cool with it. All right. And I just met it. I said, here's how I do it. And I did it out loud. I said, all right, I'm looking at everybody in the front row, about 18, 20 people in the front row. All right. And I look at everybody and say, now that I've seen everybody, I'm going to join you all together as one iconic person in my mind. Now that I have the iconic person, I'm going to go into the sphenoid bone and I'm going to give it a little turn, and that's it. And people say, oh my God, my sinuses just opened up and my headache disappeared, and just other little side effects were happening. And then somebody in the back said, well, do the whole room. I said, well, okay, all right, well, whatever. So does anybody object? Nobody objects. All right. So I did the same thing, look at everybody for 20 seconds and said, okay, I see everybody here. I kind of acknowledge it. Now I'm going to join everybody into one iconic person, go into the sphenoid, give it a little turn. And then about a third of the people just had like some shift happen to them. And this is my favorite little demo because it works every time, and it works regardless of what people believe, and it's visible to the naked eye, and you don't have to have any special measuring equipment, and it's considered physiologically impossible. And I used it to understand the nature of reality and to create these pendants. So now what happens is people have been adding in their peak experiences, their deepest love, gratitude, connection to source, superpowers, their special abilities. They've been adding everything into these pendants, and then we've been working at ways of receiving the gifts from the pendants too, because now we have about 6,000 people who've been adding their own love to that collective, to these quantum touch pendants.
And they're all connected. So whatever anybody adds to theirs gets to all of them. Yeah.
Yes. So the first thing we ask people to do is think about somebody or something you just love and cherish and adore, and just infuse it with the way you love. Because even though we have one word that says love, the meanings of this are vast. And the bouquet of qualities of love, nurturing or protective and so forth, there's hundreds of ways that people express their adoration and concern and compassion, and they're caring, the nurturing, all these qualities of love, and they're all in these pendants. And you have to be willing to receive it, But you can say, okay, I'd like to experience deeper love, and just tap your heart or your head and have that intention. Because one of the experiments, it was kind of like, I didn't even know I was doing the experiment, but it was like, I was surprised, was when I first made the pendant, I'd hand it to people. I said, what do you think? They said, let me look at it. And I didn't have any intention of aligning them. And I'd hand it to them, and it did not align them. And I was going, oh, that's so interesting, because it only operates on intention. So if you really wanted to experience the depths of self-pity, you could probably use your pendant to do that. Oh, I really want to experience deep self-pity. Oh, I really want to feel sorry for myself. I'm sure it's inside these things, okay? But you won't get it unless you seek it. So it's holding everything. It's holding all of that. And we've just been getting great results from these over the years now that they've been available.
Is that something that you have to have taken the quantum touch to
No.
have? So anyone
No,
can buy one?
Yeah, just go to the website, look in the store. The quantum touch pendants are available. We also have some that I've charged the same as the pendants and joined together. My business partner, Jennifer, she had a special project. There was this destitute family in Costa Rica, and they've been making like really nice jewelry and things and weaving and stuff. So we had them produce what we call the Share the Love necklaces with wooden pendants and beautiful beads. And Jennifer went through like massive buying beads to find the right ways and combinations. They've been assembling them, and then I charge them all and connect them all with the pendants. And we've got some other finer jewelry that's also connected exactly like the pendants. And then I have, like, you can see one of my pieces of art on the wall.
Was that yours?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
it's one of my hobbies is creating art, composing music, and playing golf. So that's another whole story there. But yeah, so these can be like room chargers. We also have room chargers where you can put these little stickums on the walls safely without hurting your paint, and you join them together in your mind, and then it charges the room, and you send your love to it from time to time and create that field. Or we have the art like that is also charged, and people can use the art also. So we're always just exploring what is possible, what is next, what can we do with this. And we love to understand that we really don't know the limits of what's possible. We're always exploring them.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that that's really the limits of belief, right? For anyone receiving it, and for people like you, expanding and seeing and experiencing your own shifts and seeing this, then you expand what you know is possible. That makes that field now available to more people. And yeah, so this is.
Let's talk exactly. Let's go deeper.
Okay.
In 1980, I woke up one morning with severe flu symptoms, a deep gurgling chest cough, high fever, terrible sore throat, bones aching, just feeling absolutely miserable. And I was just about to go into the kitchen to make some hot lemon water when the thought occurred to me that I had just attended a seminar 3 days prior where the teacher who had worked with for a while was suggesting that all illness was a function of suppressed anger. And so I thought, all right, maybe that's true. Let me examine it. So I looked to see, what am I upset about? But it was interesting. I couldn't find any emotion at all. I was numb, emotionally very, very numb. Well, that's odd. And I'm looking at my childhood, and nothing is making any impact on me at all. And maybe 5 or 8 minutes later, suddenly dawned on me that somebody in my household had said something that was intentionally meant to humiliate me in front of friends. And all of a sudden, my emotions came flooding in on me. I had this, and I said, okay, I'm just going to go with it. So I let myself be really angry. I let myself cry a little bit. I just let myself just vent. And then took a shower, got dressed, drove downtown Santa Cruz, sat in the sun. I was drinking a cup of coffee. And halfway through the coffee, I suddenly had this realization, oh my God, I was very sick this morning. Within about a year and a half, I discovered a concise way of knowing what the emotional cause is of any health, relationship, or financial condition. Because everything is an expression of connection to source. Everything is connection to source. But then it took me almost 30 years after that before I was able to put together an entire system to help people. You see, it's good to know. I knew how to find the emotional cause and I knew how to release the emotional cause, but I knew that wasn't even close to enough.
Mm.
As a hypnotherapist, you know,
Yeah.
that just the release isn't enough. And so what I came up with was, after the release of the hurt and the anger and the shame and the guilt and the fears, now we got to go deeper. Now we got to go into the realization that we hurt ourselves.
Mm.
And from that realization that we hurt ourselves, it only takes 5 or 8 minutes of deep remorse. You don't have to spend all day on it, but you need to realize how deeply you did hurt yourself. And from there, now people will go all the way to the point of feeling unforgivable. Hallelujah. Because from there, now we can do the most profound self-forgiveness process. And that self-forgiveness process takes a person to the extreme depths of soul retrieval. That soul retrieval is so deep and so profound. And what happens is they experience a level of self-love that they didn't even imagine was possible. And oh, by the way, the symptoms disappeared. And the symptoms don't even seem interesting or important at that point. And that is the deepest healing. And what we find is, okay, I remember meeting a friend at a coffee shop and she was having severe sciatica pain. So severe, she said she'd cry herself to sleep every night. And so, it's easy. Let's run energy into the piriformis and let's do a little this and that. Usually it clears it up in minutes. Didn't make any difference for her at all. Okay, let's pill up the big guns. So we figured out what she's angry about, what she's hurt about. There's the pain. What's that deep emotional thing? Well, it was 3 minutes later, we knew exactly what it was. It wasn't hidden. It was obvious. So I gave her some techniques to process, and she was able to sleep like a baby. Now, the bottom line is we can do miracles with energy. And you've seen this. Everybody working with energy has seen miracles. But when the energy doesn't work, or when it comes back again, or when it wasn't enough, and it does happen 10% or 20% of the time, that you give it and the symptoms are going to start coming back and it's just not what they need, then I go to the big guns, which is the emotional process work, because their higher self is giving them a message that, okay, we can take this in, that we want the symptoms here to remind you of how you stopped loving, of how things got broken. And that's the deeper healing. So I love exploring all the different levels, but if people want to go to the deepest levels, then they would want to explore the self-created health, because it is the most empowering thing I know of.
Self-created health. What does that mean? That this emotional healing?
This is my process that I came up with. We have teachers teaching it, and we even have people who take people through like a 5-hour journey where they, yes, it is very emotional. My cat's talking. Oh, she wants to come visit again. All right.
Good.
Yes, there
Well,
she
we
is.
appreciate that. Cats are exceptional healers.
Yes. So the process is exactly what I described, where we first discover exactly what the emotional issue is. It's not hypothetical, because I ask these simple interrogative questions and I write everything down. They say verbatim. I don't make up anything, and I don't let people tell me their story either, because the story is a complete distraction from finding the truth.
Yeah.
They know their story. That's all that matters. I don't need to know their story. I just need to know everything about their condition. I write everything down they say verbatim, and then I feed it back as a question. So around that time frame, was there something that had these qualities? And they say, well, it sounds like my relationship with my ex or my dad or something. And I'll say, well, let's see if it fits. And I go through all 40 of their replies one by one. Well, did you make you feel helpless? Yes. Did you feel hopeless? Yes. Did you feel like somebody was stabbing you in the back repeatedly? Yes. And we go through that, and everything fits like a glove to describe something. I say, well, what do you do with those feelings? Well, they're the ones I never want to feel. And then I hand them the list and say, well, maybe you're feeling it in your body instead of feeling it as an emotion. And then it sinks in and they get it. They absolutely get it. I didn't try to convince them that this is true. They know it's true because everything about their condition is a perfect reflection. So it gets to be really bizarre because somebody gets a weird spider bite, and the spider bite reminds them of something weird. You know, it's like there's some gross thing that's blah, 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 and they come up with some story about it. And it looks this way and it feels this way. And I just get every piece of information. And then they realize that the gross thing was something that had happened to them emotionally. And then you wait, how did that spider know to bite you right there in that spot to create that shape that made you feel that gross thing that was a perfect reminder? And you realize there is a spectacular synergy of magic, a spectacular dance choreography of magic happening constantly in our lives that can allow that spider to bite you right there, that will give you the perfect experience of what you didn't want to experience with your ex or dad or whatever there was. And that would remind you. So it's all Groundhog's Day. We're constantly being reminded of what we haven't healed inside ourselves. That's why people recreate the same relationships over and over again. Why some people actually injure themselves in the same place over and over again. Why we keep stubbing that same toe, metaphorically speaking, in our life and don't ever get it healed. Because why people marry their mom or their dad? Because they're trying to fix that relationship. Because it's more important to heal the soul than it is to stay alive.
Wow, that was really
It's a higher
profound.
priority to heal ourselves on the deepest levels than even to maintain life. Because you'll figure it out in the next life. You'll get it. So we're learning.
Yeah, yeah. It is amazing. I know over the years, the things that I've seen, especially when I started doing a combination of hypnosis, energy work, shamanic things together. And like you said, not knowing a lot, taking their exact words, you know,
Exactly.
and feeding them back to them in the process, and having them, you know, literally not being able to connect the dots before.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they have the aha.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I see it. And then they can't deny it. It's different than me telling you, you have this and you have that, and this is why.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think I'll work on that. Right.
I never tell anybody anything.
Yeah.
They come up with their own insights. And what's really cool is that some of my instructors have taken it further, because I'm more of the explorer, not the practitioner. I'm more of the scientist and the person to make the discoveries than I am the MD or something. I got all this hair on my face now. And what happens is people, when they have their own discoveries, they're able to then do the work properly for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So if people want to learn more quantum touch or get a practitioner, it's really important to remember they don't have to live near you, right?
No.
And now when nobody can come over to your house, or you can't go to their office or anything, that wouldn't happen anyway.
And so I remember the point I was making when I got distracted by the hair was that we have people now who are using self-created health, like over Zoom or Skype. And what they'll do is they'll walk a person, not just to help them find the emotional cause and give them homework to do, but they'll actually walk them through for 4 or 5 hours until they're all the way through the process. to get all the way to the other side, there was a couple of my instructors who did this with a woman who was clinically depressed for 7 years. And in the first session, they helped her find out what she's angry about. Depression is not caused from a lack of Ambien. I mean, from Prozac, okay? It's due to a lot of tiny or large angers that have been stacking up for years and years. So she did the process work and started releasing the intensity of the anger. She comes back a week later and I said, all right, darling, now it's time to realize how much you hurt yourself by carrying it all this time. And she gets to the point of unforgivability quite easily, which is great. And then it's time to forgive yourself now. But I can't do that. It's too painful. So no, darling, we're just here with you. You just go through this process. And she does. And after like 8 or 10 minutes, she goes, I can do this. I can do this. And she forgives herself. And she experiences this overwhelming sense of self-love. And okay, all the depression's gone. Now, psychotherapists have told me, why didn't they just teach us this in school? This is what psychotherapy is really about, is helping people make the discoveries, release the emotions, have the insights, forgive themselves, move forward, and have a good life. And so they know it now. Oh, now she's found the keyboard. All right. Cool.
I love it. She's giving us a little sound healing.
Yes, exactly. So she's looking at something outside the window and tapping to stand on the keyboard to do it. So, all right. This is unusual for her to be so active, but this is good. I love it. Anyway, so that's generally the story. And on our website, which is quantumtouch.com, people can learn how to become practitioners, instructors, how to find I think we have about 1,000 practitioners in the world. All right, ta-da. Good enough. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
There we are. So anyway, people can find what they're looking for. And if they choose to become instructors or practitioners, we have some people making a good living at it too, traveling the world, teaching classes all over, and doing lots of healing sessions with people. So, and if you need a session, you don't have to be local, like you were saying. They can just connect with one of the practitioners and receive it.
Yeah, and that's really powerful right now, because being sheltered in, being in this state of fear or anxiety or uncertainty, not only of, will I get this? Will someone I love get this? What will it mean? But also the finances and the, structures falling apart and all the good chaos we have stirring up right now.
Well, that reminds me, I'm going to be doing a free workshop.
Oh, good.
And I don't have a date set, but if they get on our mailing list at quantumtouch.com, they can attend. And what I did was I figured out a way of using quantum touch to generate miracles.
I love it.
And instead of creating a whole new workshop, I thought I'd just give this one away to everybody. And because it's so important now that we're in this position that we shift our vibration.
Yes.
And we move ourselves into the place. And so I was like really concerned, because as soon as the virus hit, we get like 60% of our income from China. And it just stopped overnight. Like no workshops were happening.
Yes.
And we just lost our income. And so I had to use some miraculous techniques and magic, if you use that word, to generate money. And I created a whole year's worth of income, like magically. Yeah. And then my business partner, Jennifer, she used it with me to help to create that income, because I gave her a percentage of it that came in magically. And she also was able to generate a loan for a house she's wanting to build, when there's no reason she should have gotten the loan, and she's building this house, and the loan is also giving her $30,000 cash, which pays for the entire building of the house and the furniture.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And so like we've tapped in on a way of raising your energy and the gratitude levels and the joy levels internally, so that you can connect with that future so profoundly as to generate miracles. So I'm going to give this away for free. And the more you know quantum touch, the more able you are to use this technique, because we're using the quantum touch to create that energy field,
Right.
to help propel and generate miracles too. So that's the latest and greatest. But I'm always kind of stretching and saying, what else can we go with it? Well, I found like a way of generating miracles. So that's been good.
Well, that's what people need, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
interesting. Like we were talking about how people either they disbelieve even when they have an experience of energy healing, or they see it and go, "Well, I can't talk about it," and yet people will believe in miracles. It's very interesting. That seems to be a different
You're
thing. Like,
right. That's, and I think part of that is from the religious traditions.
right.
That people think that, well, there were miracles that happened then and there should be miracles now, so miracles can happen, but they may not believe in the energy.
Exactly. They don't know because miracles are a mystery. So it just happened. But if we're like, well, here's why it happened. It's really simple. We're all connected.
So,
There's no distance. Oh, no, I don't. That's not true. Yeah.
well, it's a stretch, but let's give a functional definition of a miracle. A miracle is what happens when the reality exceeds your expectations.
Yeah. There you go.
So, it's absolutely impossible to find that parking place over here. But, the last 3 times I've been there, that parking place was totally just waiting for me. Yeah. Okay, that's a small miracle. The big miracle is not only did I get exactly what I wanted, but it was better than I had imagined. That's the bigger miracle. Yeah. And they can be life-changing, transformative miracles. Yeah. And so, so I've got this very direct, simple technique for accessing the energies that can allow these miracles to take place. And if you're not doing it successfully, there's other techniques to help you get to the place where you can use it successfully.
Right. Yeah.
So if there's too much pain and self-pity in the vibration for that to work, well, here's techniques for healing the pain and the self-pity so that you can generate these miracles.
Yeah. Phenomenal. There was a new German medicine. I don't know if you've heard of this concept, but it made me think of what you were talking about earlier is the emotional aspect of it. And of course, we've seen like literally instant healings when somebody has that realization of, oh,
yeah, right.
I had a lady who was afraid of money, made good money, but married a man who controlled it all, couldn't get a raise,
right.
All this money things, had a fear of money since she was 3. And all of a sudden in a session, she went, oh, I was wealthy and rich in a past life and they threw me in jail and beheaded me. So I died saying, I never want money. Money equals killing. And
right.
in that second, then she, a whole lifetime of, ways of being, ended. But this, there was a doctor in Germany that did CAT scans or MRIs of all of these people's brains. And he followed them from their disease, whatever they had, through whether they healed or they died. And the underlying thing was if they didn't resolve the emotional conflict that caused the disease, they never healed. And he could see it in the brain, in the CAT scans.
Yes.
And yeah. So,
and that's exactly why the self-created health is so profound, because I discovered this way within 5 to 20 minutes, 90 odd percent of the time, we're going to find exactly what that specific emotion is. We're not doing shoulders mean this and knees mean that. I mean, it's nice, and Louise Hay did some great work. However, these generalizations may not be true at all. Yeah. And so we have a way of nailing it exactly, bullseye every time. I did get one person that I couldn't find the emotional cause for, so I passed her on to one of my other teachers, and she was able to find it. So it's pretty close to 100% that we will find emotional cause. It's not exactly, but it's very, very close to 100%, because everything is an expression of consciousness. Mm-hmm. We're living in a spiritual reality. And how interesting that we appreciate science so deeply. And scientists are operating from a paradigm that the reality itself
is limited.
is being denied. It's just so weird because this is the foundation of everything. And my experiments with matter and consciousness would shift our fundamental belief that everything can be explained with math, physics, and logic, would change our understanding of psychology forever, which change our understandings of biology, would reprioritize medicine forever. Because, oh, person's sick, let's start with energy. Let's start with let's work with nutrition and the energetics of nutrition. Let's start with emotional process work if those things are having trouble. And then we can pull out the big guns of drugs and surgery as last resorts, not first resorts. If you have flies in your house, don't pull out a cannon.
Yeah. Open the door.
Let's open the window and let them out.
Exactly.
Let's swoosh them away. Maybe a fly swatter, but you don't need to have a cannon. Leave massive holes in the walls.
That's a great way to put it. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and that's what we're facing, really. We're facing a shift in consciousness right now.
Yes.
And it's a bit of a hot mess, and I think it's going to be for a while. Ultimately, though, the wonderful thing is if you get some of this energy work for yourself, if you start to learn it, if you get a pendant, right? If you begin to at least explore, be willing to suspend your disbelief. You do that in a movie. You do that when you read a novel, right? So, suspend your disbelief long enough, because if we can shift the consciousness as we go through this, then what the reality is after this, right, is going to be extremely different and better, hopefully. So let me ask you one more question, if you don't mind. I'm fascinated with the idea that the coronavirus is a virus that's been living in our heads for a long time. It's not new. That it means crown, that we're having this awakening to higher consciousness, i.e. crown chakra. And I actually learned the other day there's a Saint Corona.
Actually, that was debunked.
Was it? Oh,
yeah,
I was thinking that
Saint Corona was
hysterical.
debunked. Yeah, it's
okay.
not. Yeah.
But do you see any correlation between any of that?
Well, yes, in a slightly different way. I think that a lot of people are living in a world that lacks compassion.
Very much.
And they don't want to be here anymore. And they won't admit it, but they're using the virus as a way of saying, I don't really like this place anymore and I want to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are choosing to exit. But it's also reminding us of what really matters to us. So the experience and the tragic loss that people are experiencing, and the difficulty and the fears that people are carrying, reminds us what truly matters. And the need to care, the need to have compassion, the need to really prioritize the love. And so the virus is reminding us how interdependent we are and how we want to have a world that we're caring for each other. So what are the symptoms of the virus? Well, we have to be far away from each other. We can't touch each other. We have to be worried about each other. And so you look at the polarization that's happened between left and right politically as one piece of that holographic image, that people can't stand each other because how dare you believe this? How dare you believe the opposite? You're destroying everything. You're destroying everything. And that's the energetic that we're living in. And all over the world, you see this polarization taking place where people are further and further apart in terms of their beliefs and their alienation toward each other. So we have a reality where people have to physically act it out now, where we have to wear masks and hide our face from each other. So it's a culling of the herd of people who don't want to be here. It's a tragedy. It's a new birth, a new opportunity for creating a new world. And so I've talked to some of my friends who are just going through hell, and I've talked to others who are having the best time of their life they're feeling more relaxed, more at ease, more connected to source, more grateful, more happy, more, more well-being within their soul than they can remember ever, except when they were a child. And so how are you going to utilize this time? Are you going to use it to go into deeper fear and alienation and go into a tragedy? Or are you going to use it to become more yourself and to heal more profoundly and to become one with your dreams? And to that's the other side of the virus, which is the willingness to really dream, the willingness to imagine. People, dreams don't cost anything, and yet so many people are afraid to let themselves dream. And you brought up the idea of like, well, I don't believe in this stuff. Well, you don't need to believe in the ocean to get wet, but you got to jump in. And so all we have to do is take a chance and have new experiences. If you learn, what could be more fun than learning something new and growing? And yet the educational system makes it like, well, learning things is boring. That's only because a lot of educators and burned out, broken people were teaching classes from a book, and the book was dull.
Stuff that isn't true anymore too. They're teaching science.
So much isn't true that's in these books. Yeah. So it's time to reawaken the passion and the joy and the curiosity and the wonder.
I love it. Oh, what a perfect way to end. Oh, so I want to share, we'll get the information about your free workshop too, and make sure that everyone can get that.
People need to sign up to our mailing list to get that, because it's going to be limited numbers. So I'm going to do it twice, once for the Asian and European crowd, so they'll be able to get a time zone that works. So I'll do it twice.
Perfect.
Yeah, but if you get on the mailing list at quantumtouch.com, then you'll know about the free workshop.
The free workshop, perfect.
Yeah.
And then there's also a couple other free gifts that you can get using Quantum Touch with animals, accelerated healing presentation, and I think part of one of your books as well.
Oh yeah.
And so all of those benefits, all those goodies are at quantumtouch.com, right? quantumtouch.com.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much, Richard. What a delight this has been. You are just an inspiration, and I love your light and beautiful energy and everything you've done and how you're sharing it.
It takes one to know one, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before we close?
I just think that people need to realize that their love really does have impact. And the cruelest message anybody ever passed on was that your love wasn't valuable and your love didn't have any impact. And if you think back on who hurt you the most, that was always the undertone of everything, was no matter how much you loved me, wasn't good enough, didn't matter, had no impact, wasn't valuable. Yeah. But the love is the most valuable thing that you have, and to cherish it and realize it can be a source of miracles. And however damaged you are, well, it's time for healing. Let's get on with the program.
Right. Yeah.
And not to give up. Yeah.
Never too late. Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. All right, everyone. What a juicy and incredible one. You're going to need to watch this several times and just feel the energy from this. I know I'm feeling really high, like woo, woo right now. And be sure that if you're watching the video, we have the links below that you need. If you're listening to the podcast, they're going to be in the description. And if you're getting an email about any of these, you know how to reach Richard and to get your pendant or your artwork. And I highly recommend all of that. I've been a huge fan of energizing the room, putting some of these things under your food or your water, and just taking every opportunity to clear, cleanse, and balance the energies that are within you, around you, that you're consuming and that you're thinking about. So please take this, share this with everyone. It's so important that we raise the consciousness about what is possible and we create the new planet, right? All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful and blessed day. let me leave you with my favorite Mayan greeting, in la kech alakin, you are another me, I am another you, and we are one. Thank you, everyone.
Beautiful.